This is deliveranceministry.fm VideoCast number 32. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of deliveranceministry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. I'm sitting here again, as always, with my co-host and colleague, Dr. Phyllis Tarbox. This is Dr. This is Dr. Don, and we want to share with you again some more insights, hopefully, of things you can use and take with you and apply in the realm of spiritual warfare. We appreciate the topics that we get and the suggestions that we get from you, because we want to put things together that are meaningful. And I'm believing that this topic today, Phyllis, is something that people are going to enjoy hearing about.
It's huge, Don.
It is huge because a lot of people come through the door with it, and that's fear. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the spirit of fear, and specifically we're going to talk about open doors, about the spirit of fear, the demonic stronghold of fear, open doors. But we also want to share with you some success stories that we have seen with people.
We like that part.
We like it. Well, that's the best part of all, because if it's all doom and gloom, then what's the point? We're going to talk about assessing: do you need deliverance from it, or do you need something different? Because we see people coming through the door, and a common theme for many of the issues is fear in some way, shape, or form. So that's our topic today. Please listen right through to the end. We're going to tell you again, as we've done, I think, from episode 1, how you can get a copy of our Deliverance Ministry Plain and Simple Manual. It's an ebook, and we'll get that to you if you will leave us a nice review on iTunes. We'll tell you how to do that. Secondly, want to tell you again about our relatively new module that we have on our Academy website. It's called the Resource Library. We used to have our materials all over the place, spread over counseling website, Academy, in different places, and we've centralized them. There are all our free resources, our PowerPoints, videos, slide shares, and even our articles, links there. You can get access to those totally for free. You just sign up for it. We get your email, so we'll tell you how to do that. And then finally, we're going to tell you a little bit of kind of a pre-announcement about hopefully a new ministry partnership that we're going to have coming in the not too distant future. All right, let's talk about fear. In our center, we consider fear to be a strong man, the spirit of fear, or a ruling spirit over others. And it's an actual demonic spirit named fear. And so we see that spirit operating in the third heaven here where we live. And we view it as I say, a ruling spirit or a strong man that rules over other spirits. And so we want to look at the whole grouping of spirits under fear as well in a little more depth today. And so I guess we could start by saying, just to lay it out there for people, when we have that strong man of fear, what are some of the other spirits that we consider under fear?
First off would be insecurity, inadequacy, inferiority, maybe some timidity that's shut your mouth, nervousness, anxiety. I always like to pray about fear of failure, fear of the future, phobic fears. Fear of unknown, procrastination, nervousness. Yeah.
Okay. So you see this, and that's not the complete list. That's part of the list. That's kind of the list we use, but there's a lot of spirits.
Oh yeah.
Under that strong man of fear.
Tip of the iceberg, hiding. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
escaping.
Right, and so those are there, and fear of authority. Another one pops to mind. Different spirits that people can have. But here's the thing: you might be saying, "Well, how do I know if I have a spirit of fear that's tormenting me or oppressing me that I need deliverance from?" And basically, we can have fearful thoughts in our mind, in our soulish realm, and so there is a spiritual battle of the mind that goes on. So sometimes people just need wrong or have wrong thinking, and they need to get their mind renewed. It says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And so you need to learn, and there's good resources about how to learn and how to walk in faith and not in fear. And so some of that's a counseling issue. The word says we've not been given a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind.
Amen.
So that's such a potent scripture that many people just they have fear, but their thinking is wrong, and so that counseling and getting renewed in that realm can help. Okay, so that's very important. But that's not the focus so much of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to really focus on that spirit of fear that indwells us. It's in our soulish realm, and we've got so many podcasts now on these topics on deliverance ministry and different things and aspects of open doors and whatnot. But there are open doors for demonic spirits, and as I say, I encourage you to look through our other library of resources there on other podcasts that we have. But the spirits just can't jump on us. They need an open door. They need an entry point into our soulish realm. And as we say, deliverance ministry is the driving out of demons. And so the spirits are there. As they say, they can't jump on us. And there are some open doors. So we want to basically, for the duration of this podcast, just kind of talk about in general about some of those open doors, cover them briefly so you can see what they are. And then, as I say, we want to relate to you some actual cases and people that we've helped in this area. And so let's start off with probably what we consider to be the biggest open door for demonic spirits in general of any kind, and that's in the realm of generational curses and the sins of the father visit on the bloodline, basically spirits that come in through the family bloodline.
Yeah, and so the generational sin or generational iniquity, as it says in Exodus 20, verse 5, it says the iniquity of the father will visit the third and the fourth generation. And the definition of iniquity is just that propensity to be brought into the same situation. It's like alluring and bringing you in. And so the sins of your father will try to visit. Those spirits will try to visit, and they'll try to bring you into that same situation. They can look very differently, but generational iniquity can bring you into that same end point with fear. Right. So
if fear's in the bloodline,
fear can come down.
Yeah, and you see it look up your family tree and you see a lot of fear, however it got there. That spirit of fear can very likely be operating significantly in your family and other members of your family. And we have as I say, we've had so many people come through the door with fear, but that's a very, one we've seen a lot of. And I know, Phyllis, you have an actual history that you want to relate where somebody came through with that.
Yeah, with the fear and then generational fear. It was one of my clients. He came in and he had actually been in the hospital, had 41 seizures in one day and coded and died. Now they brought him back, but they couldn't figure out what was the problem with those, what was causing the seizures. They were not epileptic seizures. They had finally diagnosed them that they were actually fear-based seizures. And so here he is in the hospital having 41 seizures and, that spirit of fear. Now, the story that goes behind that was he grew up in Puerto Rico. His father was a military man, so he didn't have any problems like sharing with him things of war and things of military. So a lot of things came in through his eye gates, a lot of, war movies and things that actually had scared him when he was young. And then as he grew older, one of his acquaintances introduced him to join the Latin Kings, which now that opened up another whole door of...
It's a gang,
It's a gang in Puerto Rico. It's a brotherhood. It's here too in the States, and they have things that they do, good things together. It's a brotherhood. But, he did see a lot of things that caused fear that came into his eye gates, and it continued to cause that trauma. And so... what had happened was through all of this, because of a generational thing, it was actually a murderous spirit that had tried to follow him, followed his father, certainly through acts of war. And then it came into him, and it was always trying to kill him at some point or another. And it was trying to kill him with a lot of health related things. And so by the time we fast forward up until this point, here he is in the hospital now with 41 seizures because of a fear-based illness. This spirit of fear was really heavy. So he's in the hospital, and right next door to his hospital room, there is a woman who is dying, and her daughter is there, and her husband is there. Now, the husband had an ought against the daughter and got very angry and was threatening. And the nurse's assistant that was on duty at the time had asked him to please keep it down and be more orderly. And he got very upset with the nurse's assistant. So the next day he came back in with an intention to kill the daughter and kill the nurse's assistant. So he did. He came right in, pulled the gun out in this room right next to my client who's struggling with fear, shot and killed the daughter, and then started chasing after the nurse. Well, he couldn't find her. The obvious thing would be to go next door where my client was. He never went there. He went wandering around the whole halls of the hospital. And we were thinking that he never went into my client's room because that my client had 24/7 prayer going on. All the pastors were there. People had saturated that place. And that was the first place the nurse's assistant ran, was into that safe haven of that room. And she hid in the bathroom. Now, my client, who's in bed having seizures, knows this woman next door now is dead. And he's kind of upset because he sees she's running into his room to hide and not protecting him at all. And this guy's running around the halls with a gun, ends up killing himself. And so here we have this double murderous spirit that's like right there in the hospital with him. And of course, we're praying for him. So afterwards, I went to him, he's a personal friend, and I went to him and said, okay, listen, I said, I think that there's a spirit of death that's following you, a murderous spirit that's following you, and it's causing these spirits of fear to really have their way with your health. So, I spoke to him, I encouraged him to come in for deliverance, and he eventually did. So he comes into the office, and I always have an intercessor with me when we pray. And my intercessor, he's so cute. He says to me, he goes, well, you know what? I'm not all about the prophecy and giving all the words out. He goes, but I'm just really here. He's a straight up kind of military guy. I'm just here to help you pray and pray while you pray. And if I get a word, fine. But, he didn't think that he really would. So anyway, here comes my client. He comes in and I start to pray for him. As I'm praying for him, and I'm praying for him under the strong man of fear, he starts clenching his teeth and stiffening up. And I recognized right away that he was about to have a seizure in my chair while I'm praying for him. And so it was so tangible. The Spirit of the Lord just moved in, overtook me. I hadn't felt like that. It was just so powerful. I felt like there was liquid love just pouring out of my eyes. And the only thing I could say to him was, look in my eyes, look in my eyes. And as he looked into my eyes, his whole body just relaxed. And he was at perfect peace. And I called out that spirit of fear, and it left. And it was so powerful. Afterwards, my intercessor looks at me and said, oh my gosh, did you feel that? It was like the Spirit of the Lord moved into the room and everything just stopped. It was so tangible, the love that moved in. Well, the story is that he has never had another seizure since that deliverance. And when I asked the Lord, I said, can you please tell me, I would love for all deliverances to be just that easy. Just look in my eyes and we'll command it to go, And the Lord said to me, perfect love casts out all fear. So the good news is today he's a worship leader. He's leading worship. He's happily married, expecting his first son, and all is well. And he has not had one more seizure since we called out that spirit of fear. So it's really, a powerful, powerful story.
That is. I mean, that's a bloodline, a spirit that seemed to be in the bloodline,
right,
and probably fed at different times along the way, and it was been powerful of its own right. And so, that's one of those things. It's like through no fault of his own, that spirit was there, right? And
he opened the door. I mean, he did open the door by joining the Latin Kings.
That's true. Okay, right.
So he did follow in the footsteps. I mean, he was drawn into that. He had plenty of doors we had to work on, but. Boy, I tell you what, God just sovereignly showed up and melted that fear right out of him.
Awesome. Perfect love casts out
all fear. Yeah.
Generational curses, that's a big open door.
Yeah.
Word curses, power of the tongue, life and death. People just can have things spoken over them. I remember several years ago, so I can't remember all the details, but I prayed deliverance for a man who, at a county fair one time up north in Ohio years ago, had something spoken over him about what was going to happen, whether he was going to have I can't remember truthfully the specifics of the curse, like his marriage was going to fail, or I believe it was going to have a child die. I think that was the nation of it, and what had happened was that was a one-time thing, but that became a curse for him because he believed it, and it opened the door for a spirit of fear to work in his life. And so he had to break that curse and get that spirit out of him. Like I say, I can't remember the specifics of what was spoken over him,
but it was definitely
that one
a word curse. Yeah.
It was a curse. So we can, and parents, can, and people can speak curses over people close to us. People speak things over themselves. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time. We're cursing ourselves. It's like, no, we need to break those curses. So that's an open door.
Yep.
Then there's things that we do that open the door for the spirits of fear to enter. We can pick up spirits, as with any spirit, from sexual partners through sexual sin, occultic sin, things that we do in the cultic realm can open the door. And even we talked about the eye gates, the eyes and the ears, the windows of the soul, things we see, music we listen to, videos we see, can open the door for those spirits to come into us as well.
Well, that's what happened to me. I mean, I remember being a little girl and being such a warrior. I mean, so courageous, had all this wild blonde hair, and I was always, tall. I'm 6 foot. So back even when I was 5 years old, I was way bigger than everybody else in the neighborhood. And I think I used to go around beating up the boys sometimes. I just had such a roar. And when people would say they had fear, I would say, what is that scaredy cat stuff? I just don't understand that scaredy. I had no fear. I just remember not being afraid of a thing.
Well, being 6 feet, that would make a difference.
Well, I wasn't 6 foot at 5, but you know what? I was a good head
You're
and
tall.
head
You're
above
tall.
all my friends. Yeah, but now I am 6 foot.
People like you used to make me afraid.
I would think so. Yeah, as a little torturous child. Yeah, but anyway, when I was young, I just remember that. So I remember the tangible shift when it stopped, and I became very fearful. My parents had decided they were going to go to the drive-ins, back in the day, and they would always take us, to see the kiddie flicks, Walt Disney, different movies up front, and then of course the adult show would come on afterwards. Well, the adult show the night that they took me was Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte by Betty Davis. And for all of you senior citizens out there, you'll remember it was an Alfred Hitchcock movie where the head rolled down the stairs and the guy came out of the swamp with a headless. And I mean, I stayed up past the kiddie movie. I was supposed to be asleep in the back seat. Cars were good for that back then. But I stayed up and I watched through the cracks in the seats. And I became so afraid that night when I went home, I had to sleep with all my stuffed animals. I started a ritual of checking every door, looking under the bed, closing all the curtains, so that fear came in. And I remember just being absolutely terrified of the dark after that. So it came in through the eye gates. Then, the enemy, he's so faithful to just re-solidify these situations. It's like a revolving play with different players in it as you get older. So I got a little bit older. I'm 12 years old. Again, it's in the middle of the night. It's dark. It's Christmas time. And I'm sleeping right by a window, and somebody tries to break into my bedroom window. So, I could hear him trying to come in, and I was paralyzed with fear. Then at 16, I'm laying in bed, and I hear a ladder go up outside my window. I'm thinking it's going to be better now, but there's a ladder up outside my window, and these people are climbing up to my bedroom. So everything that came at me through the fear of the dark was it was fortified as the years went. By the time I got to be 40, I could not get out of bed to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I would run to the bathroom and then run back and then pull the covers up over my head. So I was so paranoid. But I went through deliverance, and then it hit me about 2 weeks after I had gone through deliverance. I was outside taking the trash out, and I was getting ready to dump it. And I was singing a Mercy Me song at the time. And I just stood there in the dark at night, looking around going, oh my gosh, I'm out here in the dark and I'm not afraid. Of course, my family is looking out the window going, is Mom really out there in the dark?
Wondering when you were going to come running back in.
They were used to my little scenario, but it was gone. So deliverance really got rid of that. So anything that I always pray over the eyes, because I think that, we say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but that is a real strong gate. Eyes and ears.
Ears for music, especially. Yep, exactly. Yep.
Amen.
Yeah, people and I tell the story too that we're in deliverance ministry, but we should not be afraid of the demonic realm. But you go to movies anymore and you sit there and you
close your eyes for all.
Yeah, you have to. I remember one time my wife and I went. I remember it distinctly. We had to sit through like 5 or 6 movie trailers in a row, and they were all
trailers in movies.
There were so many, and they seemed like they were all demonic. And literally, in the purpose of the trailers, they put the bad stuff in there to entice you,
scary
and
stuff,
they scare you. So I literally closed my eyes and covered my ears. Put fingers in my ears to cover them so I would not. I
bet you look cute.
Well, I said I'm not going. I can't do this. I'm not going to do this.
Not what we do.
Not and so. Yeah. So eyes and ears are the eye gates, are windows to the soul. So that can be an open door. Things that we do. Then there's things that are done to us. Another open door doesn't say, well, it's not fair. Why is it a lot of things done to us that are open doors for demonic realm that we don't ask for? See, some people say, well, you have to invite the devils in, or you have to invite it. It's like, that's nonsense. There's a lot of things that happen to us. People don't, or that demonic torment don't involve us inviting anybody in.
Right.
You know, you have to let the devils do this. It's like, no, there's things that happen to a person that become open doors through zero fault of their own.
Exactly.
And two of the ones we want to highlight is abuse. People who grow up in abusive environments, verbally, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexual abuse, that's an open door for demonic torment.
And I think the one that is the most grievous that I've heard was this woman that came in. She's a beautiful woman of God, but, you know, she told me that she had been buried alive when she was 5 years old.
Wow.
I know. Now, a lot of clients...
She didn't invite that, did she?
No, she was 5 years old. Exactly. And she said, and I have clients say to me all the time, I bet my story is the worst one you've ever heard. Well, I think this is probably this one lists up in the top 5 at least. She was 5 years old, and this boy in the neighborhood who was suffering clearly from mental illness and dementia, he decided he was going to bury her. So he did. He buried her at 5 years old. She remembered the feeling on her face. She remembered the sand and the dirt and everything that he was pouring on top of her. And she said to me, something switched in him, and he decided he didn't want to kill her. So he dug her up, and then he murdered somebody else in front of her by burying them alive.
Wow.
I know. Well, now this set up fear like crazy in her. So but through all the places in her life, she was always around a spirit of torture, which that is a strong spirit of torment and torture under a spirit of fear. And she had torturous people that were always assigned to her, whether it was in marriages or in job, or, you know, she traveled a lot overseas with missions. It was always a torturous spirit of fear that would try to come at her. So we prayed for her, and she had said that she was able to manage life by keeping busy. Where it showed up was when she actually retired, and she had a lot of peace and rest, and then her body just couldn't handle it anymore, and it really manifested in bad ways. So we called that spirit of fear out, and she was doing so much better. But that had come after her. Now, one of the other stories that I talk about...
I think I just want to make the distinction here. Like, that's like a trauma.
Torture.
A traumatic event.
Yeah.
And it can happen, something like that, a traumatic thing. There's rapes, there's molestations, or things that can happen, what we call trauma events. But then there's other times, there's people who grow up in an atmosphere, a home atmosphere, like of abuse, where they live in fear. What's daddy? Are you going to come home? Is he going to be sober? Is there going to be fighting? Is he going to beat us tonight? You know, that kind of an atmosphere growing up in that abuse, and that could be an open door.
Right. And I definitely have one of those stories. I mean, this little girl grew up, her father I believe he got into some drugs, and he was also an alcoholic. And you're right. She was a little girl. She had an older brother. She didn't never know what to expect. She was daddy's little girl. So she trusted him, and she loved him. But he would come home in fits of violence and fits of rage. And the only way she knew how to cope with it as a little girl was to go hide up in her room. So she had been in dance, most of her childhood. So what she would do is she would go up in her room, and she would put her little dance outfits on, and she would pretend and basically hide in her room and pretend that she was in a dance show, or do anything in her little mind to just change her atmosphere. That's, she shifted. So what happened is the spirit of fear came in, and it actually caused this disconnection more or less with reality, a lot of isolation, a lot of fear-based isolation, but also what entered into her was a hiding spirit from that trauma. So it was a fear-based hiding, and she would hide in her room. And a lot of times what we'll see is when a spirit enters a person, it takes on like how they were at that age, So it was like what I would call a little girl spirit of hiding.
I was going to say almost what we call like a personality spirit of some kind, right? And like people, medically they try to go down the DID, dissociative identity disorder. That's not really what we're talking about here.
No.
in that scope, but it's a similar type of concept, right? They disassociate from what was there. It's like, I'm not here, and they go somewhere else.
Well, you'll see that a lot with women that have been abused. I mean, I've had children that have been put in the porn trade by their parents, and that, you know, they develop an alternative reality just to not have to deal with what they're doing with. But with her, she just went into her room, simple little thing. She put on her little dance outfits and she danced, and so she took on the spirit of hiding. So when we brought her in for deliverance and we tried to, you know, get to the root of it, this thing would manifest. Now, she was a denominational girl. She was a church-going girl that was in a pretty straight-up, strict denomination. So this was a stretch for her to come in for deliverance, I think. And so when she started manifesting, her hands were waving and they were clicking. And she was doing all this little girl dance routines, and she was clicking her fingers.
While you were doing deliverance?
Trying to pray for her for deliverance. This thing was manifesting.
This wasn't during the teaching or the interview. No. This was while you were trying to minister deliverance.
While we were trying to minister to her. Her friends had actually said to her, well, the people that were at her denominational church, well, we'll just see how this deliverance thing goes, because, you know, we know what you do in the middle of every board meeting when we get together for a church meeting. And if you don't do it, we'll know that you got free. They wouldn't tell her what it was. But while we were praying for her, this thing just started snapping its fingers and giggling away. I mean, it was ridiculous. We're having a hard time keeping her on task, right? So finally, I called out a little girl spirit of hiding and escaping. And that thing manifested and it left her. But she sat there and she looked at me and she goes, I don't know why I'm doing this. Why is this happening to me? Because she was really put up. It wasn't anything in her little church world. But we got rid of it. That little thing stopped. And she did have the hiding anymore. So she goes back to work, you know, she goes back to church, and she's in one of these church meetings, and gets done with the meeting, and she comes outside, and they went up to her and they said, so where did you go and what did you have done? And she said, well, did I pass? Because you never told me what the test was. And they said, well, during every meeting, you would sit there and you would shrug your shoulders and start with this little body action, and you would go, and start giggling. So she was like, oh my gosh, because basically she never realized that she did it, and she did it all the way through her deliverance. And so we prayed for that little girl spirit of hiding, and it was gone. So it's good. It was good. She's doing much better now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that would be annoying after a while if you get exposed to that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, praise God for that.
So she's free.
Right. And all right, anything else you want to add about abuse or trauma? Any other open doors, things that we haven't want to elaborate on?
Well, you know, I see a lot with children who have been actually considered to be aborted. I mean, you know, we talk about that a lot, but a lot of parents of unwanted children where they're actually consider aborting that child. You know, I've got a lot of people that come in and they don't understand why they have such strong fear of rejection. But if their mothers had considered aborting them and they were unwanted, you know, that little baby probably fought for its place in life. And it starts early in the womb. And any womb curses, like you spoke about word curses, but any curses that are spoke over the baby while it's being formed in the mother's womb.
Or things in the birthing room, right? That's a trauma, too, that can happen, right? Babies being born. We've seen that as an open door.
Sure. And so it sets up a lot of fear. So that fear of rejection can get stronger. Certainly if they're not wanted by their mother and they're not going to get the nurturing initially that they probably should get. I see that fear of rejection as big as children get older. And then the enemy, of course, he's always so faithful to bring in the recruits at different stages of life. So they're rejected on the playground, or they're rejected by their siblings, they're rejected by their girlfriends and their boyfriends and then their husbands. And that fear of rejection just gets bigger and bigger.
Lots of open doors.
Lots of open doors.
We hope we've, in this podcast, that we've given you some things to think about. If you're listening to this and and fear's an issue in your life, any of these issues we've talked about, anxiety or hyperactivity or nervousness or phobic fears, you know, God doesn't want us to have fear. So, you know, if you've tried counseling, and that doesn't work, if you're on medications and they're not doing for you what you think you need to do, I urge you to consider deliverance ministry. Mm-hmm. If you've got a spirit of fear there, then that spirit needs to go, and anything else will just be a Band-Aid. And so, God, there's better hope for you than just continuing to live in fear. So if this, like I say, just consider it, Pray about it as the Lord leads. Consider contacting us or finding a good, competent Christian counselor and or deliverance ministry in your area. If you want to get a hold of us, you can do it. We work here out of Florida, but we also work worldwide over the internet. We'd love to hear from you and see if we can, see if we can help you with this. Because, as I say, God wants you free. He doesn't want you living in fear, because that will really hold you back from doing and being all that God has called you to do and be. We'd like to, before concluding this podcast, just tell you real briefly how to get this copy of the Deliverance Manual, plain and simple manual. You can leave us a review on iTunes. Just go there to our website, andbcounseling.com, and find the deliveranceministry.fm tab. You can leave a review. There's instructions there on how to leave a review and a form to fill out, and we'll get you a copy of that manual. So that's the first thing. Second of all, if you haven't done so already, and hopefully you have, because we've been announcing it for some time, is go to our Academy or counseling websites and just sign up to get access to our free resource library. Totally free to all our videos, podcasts, articles, and whatnot. You get a name on an email list, and we'll email you when we have new ones. Of course, we have our store there where you can get the deliverance ministry training courses. Those are, of course, fee-based courses on learning how to minister deliverance like we do, minister to children. You can look to see our primer videos. We have some deliverance ministry primer videos teach you about some of the basics of spiritual warfare. We also have a counseling degree program if you want to get licensed as a Christian counselor or earn your bachelor's, master's, or doctoral level degree in that. We have a program for that there as well, so check that out. And finally, just kind of a little bit of a tease here, just to lay it out there to look for in the future. We're going to have what we're going to call right now kind of a ministry partners program to give you an opportunity to be a monthly contributor to help us expand the ministry of deliverance. We want it, God's called it to get us out, to get it out there to different churches, different places, and people in the world. We need help doing that. We want to be able to get deliverance ministry also more accessible to people who need it here locally, and we want to have a program for that as well. So we'll stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on that. As always, please email us, put a review on iTunes. Let us know what you'd like to hear on these podcasts, and we'll certainly prayerfully consider that. We hope this one, as well as all the others, has been a blessing to you. Tell your friends and neighbors, send them the link so they can subscribe, and we hope that you'll all be blessed by what you hear here. So we thank you for listening once again. God bless you, and we'll talk to you next time.